Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope everybody enjoyed their break. How was the break for everyone? Did anybody even go to break? You guys were just waiting there. You need to be able to take your breaks, guys. So I'm a big fan of that. I have to tell you that in all my classes, I don't teach more than 1 hour without taking a break, because there is no human being on earth. Back in the days, you used to cram and study for 3 hours, 5 hours non-stop before you go and write the exam. That's not helping you out. Even if you're just sitting down, stand up, stretch, walk around, get blood to flow to your brain, think about anything else but what you were doing earlier, and then go back with a fresh mind. This is definitely going to help you out in your career in any time in life, because looking at the same thing for an hour without having a fresh perspective gets you stuck in the same position. When you walk away, grab some coffee or a banana or water, come back, you have a fresh perspective, and all of a sudden you have the answers right in front of you. So after the break, does anyone have any questions pending that they'd like me to address? Okay, so no question. I see a message, the last message on the chat. Okay, Mr. Gilbert, go ahead with your question, sir.
All right. I'm just joining. Sorry that I came late, but I just wanted to ask. Apart from the Mac open system and the Windows Linux, is can we still do the programming? Can we like work also with a phone, a smartphone?
Very good question. Very good question. Can you work with your smartphone? Definitely.
Mm.
If you see right here, I'm going to Chrome. If I get on Chrome, I should be able to go to repo it or Anaconda distribution.com, sign in, and you can still use your phone and write all your Python code just like that. That's very brilliant question. Python is very portable. You're not going to be able to do that with Java or C# or any of those. With Python, again, you can run anything on the cloud. You can use everything that's on there, all your installers, all your interpreter, it's on the cloud. So in here, I can go to anaconda.com, type in my username and password. I should be able to see everything that I wrote on there, execute everything I wrote on there just fine. Does that answer your question?
All right. Yeah, I do. Thank you.
Yeah, so all you need is just your computer. The computer is not necessarily your desktop and your laptop. Your computer could be your phone. So if you're on a flight and you have internet on that flight, open your laptop or open your cell phone and type in Anaconda and type what you need to do. If you're on a trip, maybe on a train or a bus or in public transport, you have internet, type it. If you're in Cameroon and you have internet, that's totally fine. And you should be just good. Okay. So I see some people have issues, they need to upgrade their system to be able to download. And also the size of the Anaconda is not small. I mean, it's an Anaconda, right? It's huge. So you need to be able to create space. That's why I said that is just for you to keep for later on. But everyone should be able to use the Anaconda code in the cloud to execute it. For those that are going to be installing it, again, I was just going to walk you through the same thing I have on here. Go through all of that stuff, read, agree the license. The same thing you're going to be doing with, what do you call it? With Windows, right? Windows and so on and so forth. I'm just installing this because I want Anaconda to be on my system. But the standard installation takes about 4 gigabytes of space on this computer. So if I want it to continue, fine. It goes ahead, installs it, everything is fine. Put in my default folder and so on and so forth. So while that's going on, that's fine. We're all going to use the cloud version. Okay. So on the cloud, everybody will be on the same page. so that nobody's complaining that their machine is slow or fast, and so on and so forth. So right now, I expect everyone to be able to get on here. Why do I keep going to the wrong page? Everyone should be able to get on here peacefully, quietly, and nicely. Do we have any other further questions before I proceed? All right, so I'm going to switch from the Anaconda launcher and go back to our slide because I missed out on, where is it? Oopsie, it's too fast. I missed out on a few things I needed to point out before the break. So let's get back to it. There we go. So we did talk about installing the versions and distributions, right? I'm assuming everybody was able to download. At some point in time, you should be able to install it before our next class tomorrow. But for now, we're going to use Anaconda in the cloud. We talked about the major players in the cloud, Amazon and Google. They have their own versions, but we're going to use Anaconda on the cloud because I'll also encourage you to download Anaconda locally, regardless of which system you have. Now that we've gotten that big boy, the C Python or the Anaconda Python installed, we want to be able to code and run and execute some programs. How does that happen? You can code line by line using an interactive console, an interactive shell. Let me go back again a little bit to talk about some hardware and software. So in computer science, or in computers, we know it's made up of hardware and software. The hardware is what we need. Think about that CPU, that memory, and also here, let me actually try to draw a picture of that here. So we have the hardware. I should clean this up. You have your hardware, which is in the center of everything, your CPU, the memory, and so on and so forth, input-output devices. And you have your software, which is what interacts with the hardware, regardless of Microsoft software, Google software, whichever software. Between the hardware and the software, you have your operating system, okay? So your operating system is what resides between your software and your hardware. In the operating system, which is Linux, Microsoft, or Mac operating system, you have what's known as the shell and the kernel. I don't know, does anybody in here speak Pidgin English? Okay, so anybody here knows about palm trees? And the palm trees usually have something that is known in Pidgin as banga. Maybe so. So you have kernel, right? The kernel has a shell, and inside you have that wonderful stuff that is what is used to make the palm oil. So think about that in the same light. Even though you have to eat that juicy banga that is used to make banga soup, right? That is the part that is the software. Inside is where the hardware is. Your kernel is what is inside, and your shell is what covers it, just like an eggshell. An eggshell is there's egg whites and there's egg yolk. So that's the relationship between software, hardware, and your operating system. Your operating system has that shell and the kernel that interacts between the software, which is what is the code, and what you have in your shell. So in here as well, you see that Python has a shell, okay? The Python shell is what we use to write the command directly to go to our, let's see, do I want to go back? No. That goes directly to our memory, and then the memory sends it to the CPU. So that shell interacts directly with the hardware rather than going through a graphical user interface. So GUI, graphical user interface, is a point, drag, click, and drop, and so on. But then You also have CLI, which is command line interface. Command line interface is the shell. So Python shell, Python console, Python terminal, which is a terminal that you see here that I opened up that we were using to write Python. Okay. So this terminal, which I'll show you that later on, is what you can use to write your Python code line by line, just like the notebook, which you're going to see when we get on here. Obviously, I can open it now because I have my, let me change that pointer. Okay, so in here as well, when we go ahead and create a notebook, you can open up a new notebook. This is where you'll be writing your code line by line. Very similar in here. If you want to get into Python environment per se, all I have to do is type Python 3, enter, and you would see that my cursor has changed now from this tilde to have these 3 arrows. These 3 arrows are showing me that now I am in the Python environment. As you can see in here, I'm using Python that, which is the default as of that day. And if I need to get help, I should type help. If I need copyright and all what, I should write that. It's using a Darwin or it's using a CLang. That's the distribution information, the version of that distribution on Darwin, which is what it's using. But from here, in this point in time, I am in the Python console, okay, which is a default, okay? So it's interactive. So that's one way you can work with Python, going directly to the console, and use that notebook to also get to it. All right. That's when you're writing line by line. In there, we can start writing our Python code just like that, simple and easy. But most of the time, you're not going to need to do that because you want Python to help you to do something reusable. So instead of writing each line after the other, you can write 20 lines, 30 lines, 50, 100, 1 million lines, and save it in a file. In that case, you can save it in a file, which is a script, right? That file will be like a script. Think about a movie. When you're going to act a movie or somebody wants to act a movie, they have to give them a script. When it's their part, they just read their part. When it's their part, they read it. That's why you have it as a script, rather than having just one-liners. So somebody who is just featuring in the movie is just going to have one line. The person that's the main actor is going to have a script that they have to go through, things that they need to do. Again, think about if you have a child that you have to tell them to go to school every day. You cannot just tell them go to school every day. You have to wake up and say, hey, get up from bed, make up your bed, brush your teeth, take a shower, wash the dishes, make breakfast, eat, go and catch the bus, go to school, and so on. So all of those are instructions that you give in order for the child to go to school. So you can write all those instructions and save it in a file that says go to school. When you want to run or execute that code, you can just say now that go to school, and then the child gets up and does all those things sequentially and goes to school, okay? Just like if you're a database administrator or an administrator for systems at work, you probably know that if you have a new employee, you have to do certain steps. You can write all of those in a Python script, and then you know, okay, new employee, add them to this database, give them this access, add them to this distribution list, do this to them, install this on their software, on their hardware, and so on and so forth. All you have to do then is just have a script for adding new employee, have a script for changing new employee from team A to team B, have another script for deleting employee if they decide to leave the company, and so on and so forth. So that's why Python is very useful, very powerful, not only for employee. If you want to process data and you know that you're going to be pulling data from one location to another, you can write it out in a script. Each time that has to be redone, every week, every month, every day, you just go ahead and run your script. Everything goes on. You go about doing your business, drinking your beer, your script is running, everything is fine. Does that make sense? What questions do we have? Okay, so again, that's how you can write your code line by line. Before I want to go into that, I really wanted to solidify this. But you hear things like text editor, IDE. A text editor, when I started coding, all we used was Notepad. We didn't have all this fancy stuff. So it's like your grandparents tell you when we went to school, all we were using was counting sticks. Now children I don't even know if children have counting sticks anymore. You know, everybody wants to be on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and so on. Okay. But that's how things were done in the past. You have a text editor, black and white. You type in your code. If you make a mistake, you have to figure it out. I might think I had it tough, but think about those people that had a whole wall made up of a CPU that's made up in a whole wall. There they have punch cards back in the days when NASA just started inventing computers. You have a punch card with instructions. You go and stand in a line. You go and put in your punch card. It executes. If there's a mistake, you have 24 hours to go around and wait again for that instruction to execute. So everything again is getting faster, better, easier, and so on. So that's why before we were using text editors. Now most of the time people use IDEs. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. Okay, integrated. I cannot spell. Integrated Development Environment, because it does not only include the editor. You use the editor to write, but you can also have things like code completion that help you out. You can also have things like underlining, suggestions, and so on and so forth. Color coding all your code so that it's easy for you to debug your code, to see mistakes and fix them, and so on and so forth. So that is what we have in terms of executing, writing our code. You can write it directly in your IDE, or you can write it, or let's not just say IDE, you can write it directly in your code editor, your text editor, your IDE, or in your shell. Or you can write it and save it in a script and then execute it. There are different ways you can execute it as well. Okay. So what questions do we have on that note? No questions? So did everybody succeed in logging into Anaconda? Awesome. So if everybody succeeded in logging into Anaconda, then we can start playing around with it. But before we start playing around with it, I would like to show you what it looks like if you're writing the code in the terminal. Okay. If you have it in Windows or Windows or Mac or in Linux, once you type in Python 3 or Python, it takes you to the Python shell. In the Python shell, you can write any command, maybe 2 plus 7. 2 plus 7, and you press enter, it goes back and executes it and gives you the answer. Okay, maybe you want to find 5 multiplied by 30. 5 multiplied by 30 will give you the answer 150. All of that is being executed in Python. Okay, maybe you also want it to print out something for you. If I want to say print, I'll have to use a print function, which we'll talk about eventually. A function always has parentheses, opening and closing parentheses. In your parentheses, you have parameters. What is it that I want to print? If it's a word, I have to put it in quotes. So since it's a word, yes.
Yeah, the one you're using is the one in the cloud, right? Not the one that was downloaded.
Okay, this one I'm using is the one that is built into Mac operating system. So I'm starting with this, but I'm going to jump into the cloud and type in these same instructions in there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So it's okay for us to use, but the one in the cloud for now, right?
Yes, use the one in the cloud for now. I'm definitely going to do them side by side so that you can see. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's put it side by side here so you can see. I've written that instruction, or not the well, it's an instruction. I've written the first two instructions. 2 plus 7, 3 times 30. I can go ahead and do that in the cloud as well. 2 plus 7. If I need to execute this, I need to press the play button. Okay, so press play. It gives me my answer is 9. Let's go ahead and make this bigger. And reduce the size of that. And 5 multiplied by 30 gives me, oops, not enter. Okay, gives me 150, just like here. Now I can go ahead and say I want to print something out. To print it out, let's say I want to say hello, ZK. Since I have this in quotes, it's going to treat it as a string. We'll talk about those later on. So if I press enter, you see it prints out hello DK. Awesome. So Aaron, you're using Visual Studio as your code editor. I would like to start using Visual Studio tomorrow because I wanted us to get comfortable with this, but you can continue with it. If you succeeded in getting Anaconda on the cloud, that would be great. Because the next slide, we're going to talk about Visual Studio a little bit and those other ones as well. Very good question, Aaron. Awesome. So I've written that print statement on here. I can go ahead and write the same print statement in Anaconda. Again, print. You can see I'm writing in Anaconda. You can see those colors are different. But if I write it in my Mac, the colors look really boring. You can't even see the difference. But here you can see plus has a purple sign, a purple color. Multiplication has a purple color. And the color differences actually help you to be able to have readability. That's the word I want to say. So let's go ahead and say hello. And this time around, let's try Vitus. And if I execute that, it prints out just that. Okay. So those are 3 Python instructions that I've given. Normally, you wouldn't want to be giving instructions one line after another, as we said. Normally, you want to write all your instructions and save them in a file, and that file would be having an extension of .py, which stands for Python, obviously. If you look at what we have here, this is the file that I'm working on right now. It has an extension of .ipynb, which is Interactive Python Notebook or IPython Notebook. So it's definitely not an IPython file. Here I cannot save it. But in Visual Studio Code, which Aaron is using, he can save his file as a Python extension. So I do not want to go into that, but I'll go into that shortly. Okay, so what questions do we have so far? Everybody good? All right, so let me switch back to our PowerPoint and carry on from there. So we're all good with a few things like Python shell. Everybody has an understanding of that. At least if you forget everything today, you remember Mbanga, right? And your notebook, which we've seen a Python notebook, a Jupyter notebook in that case, and the difference between writing your code line by line and in a script, you know, using the terminal, using a text editor, using an IDE. Right after that, we had break time earlier, but let's continue. An anatomy of Python, okay? First, Python again is a language first and foremost. Just like I said earlier, a child is born, they don't know any language. That is you right now. Put yourself in that position. I put myself in that position before. I knew nothing. All I could do was cry. What the hell is this teacher talking about? I'm there crying. Eventually, I'm going to start with you tomorrow with data types. Okay? These are the building blocks of every programming language. Whether you're doing Java, Python, HTML, all those things, they have data types. If you can understand it very well tomorrow, you're good to go with any other programming language. you're always going to see that. The same with variables. So think about the words that children start learning. The child is born, they don't know anything. Right now, we don't know anything. Maybe we do, right? But we're going to start by learning the different parts of a language. In order for you to communicate in whichever language, you have to know the differences between nouns, verbs, adjectives, and so on. Those are like data types for us in this case. A variable is a word. We're going to talk more about those tomorrow. And then we'll start writing sentences. Like what I wrote was an expression, which is a sentence. 2 plus 7 is an expression. 2 and 7 are operands. The operands are joined by an operator. That plus sign is a plus operator, which tells it to do a certain thing. Add those two numbers together, and it makes up that sentence, that statement. That was a Python statement. When I said print hello DK, that was a function. I used that function print because somebody back in the days created a function that says if you see people putting this word print in parentheses, whatever they put in there, output it in the console. So that was a function that someone created so that I don't have to recreate it. You don't have to recreate it. We just use the function. We don't know what the function does. We just use it. We know that it's going to present us with our output. So that's how you have a paragraph. Someone has written code that we're using now. But if we decide that we want to write our code and save it, think about those instructions that you want for your child to go to school. You save it as go to school.py. Those instructions are always going to take place. You can have all those related instructions saved in a module. That's what a module is known as. A module usually has lines of code and functions in there, okay, in any order. But the main thing is that they are all related. We'll talk more about modules in a little bit. So if you're used to data sciences, they'll tell you, hey, you need this module to do this code. You need that module for visualization. You need this module for data analysis. You need this module for, cloud computing and so on. The same with packages. If modules are like files, packages are like folders, okay? Because they group those modules together. Again, it might be related modules and so on. So with Python, you can have a package for data science. You can have a package for this. You can have a package for that. The reason you see when we want to download Anaconda, it is so huge, is because Anaconda has a lot of packages. If you dissect that Anaconda that we downloaded, you see that there's a module for this, there's a module for that, there's a module for this. All those modules are in there to make scientists have their work easier. If you don't want to deal with all that science stuff, then just get to your black and white black and white C Python, right? Again, I don't want to care whether it's Senegalese rice or Chinese rice or Nigerian or Cameroonian rice. I just want my plain old rice without any flavor or anything. Just give me that rice. Don't waste time adding all these spices there. So that's what packages are. A library now. A library and packages are actually being interchanged. They use it interchangeably. But it's a much more familiar conception to say that libraries are sets of packages. So when we say Python is very extensible, it's because we are saying Python has many libraries. There's a library for web programming. There's a library for cloud computing. There's a library for machine learning. There's a library for that, because those are all sets of reusable code that we can always use for a particular job, whether it's DevOps, whether it's machine learning, whether it's cloud computing. All those libraries are there. But now when you talk of a library, just like you see in this picture, in the library, you go into the library to borrow a book, you use it, you put it back. We don't own the code. Just like I said, print this. I don't own the print code. I'm just using somebody's code, I'm printing it, and it's available for anybody to use. In that case, you have a library, a framework, which you see on here, like this house has a framework. A framework, you actually take it and you own it, and then you add other pieces to that. So if you talk about using Python for a web framework like Django, Flask, that's because they have already built the structure for you. Now you just come and say, okay, if you build the structure of the website, I want my website to be blue. I want my website to be yellow. I want my website title to be this. I want my website content to be that. Then now that's what a framework is. You can have a framework like you see in here. You can decide if your roof is red or blue or green. You can decide if your wall is going to be metal or if your wall is going to be wood or your wall is going to be cement. Does this make sense? What all of these different pieces of Python are?
Yeah, this is really good. Thanks.
Awesome, awesome. Glad to hear that. So again, we're going to start really slow. Once we solidify all these concepts, you're not going to be hearing my ugly voice again. It's going to be us just practicing and practicing and having fun. That's the best part of it, having fun. Okay. So this talks about the different parts of, English language, French language, any language, Python language. We start learning words, sentences, paragraphs, getting chapters and books and books and books and books until people cannot shut you up anymore. You just keep producing more and producing more. Okay. So now that we've talked about the anatomy, the next thing I wanted to point out was the tools. If we're going to be writing code, we need to figure out a way we're going to be writing it. What are we going to use to write the code, right? First of all, I've shown you this boring black and white thing in here. Oops, now I had to kick you guys out of there. This is the IDLE, which is the default editor for Python. When you install Python, you get that IDLE, okay? So that IDLE, again, is our default Python editor, as you see at the very top here. Apart from that, you can also use other tools, right? Again, you don't only need a hammer to be able to build a house. The tools are not what makes Python what it is. Python is always there. It's up to you whether you want to use whatever. But Visual Studio Code is very popular. And I need to warn you, there are two types of Visual Studio. There's Visual Studio without the code at the end. That's one separate software from Visual Studio Code. The Visual Studio, you have to pay for it. Visual Studio Code is free. So Visual Studio is used to build .NET applications. Visual Studio Code, you can use it for multiple different types of languages, which we'll see in a little bit, okay? Some people use PyCharm, depending on what industry you're in. So when you get to an interview, they'll ask you, okay, so you know Python, what tool do you use to write Python? A question like that should not scare you. You say, I'm familiar with multiple tools. I use Visual Studio Code. Right now, we are using Jupyter because we are using Notebook. Anaconda actually comes with Jupyter and also with Spyder. Okay, so Jupyter and Spyder are quite, popular too. You notice that, Eclipse as well is also popular. Eclipse has a PyDev, should I say, plugin or extension that you use. Okay, so there are multiple different types. It's up to you. Some people, maybe they started learning Java and they were using Eclipse or Java, so they want to stick to Java. Others, maybe they started learning C# and they were using Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, and they're familiar with that. In my industry where I work now, we do a lot of stuff with .NET. So most of the developers are comfortable with using .NET. Nobody wants to go out there and learn another or use another tool. They get comfortable with what they have. But for data science, most people use Jupyter, and I really encourage Jupyter Notebooks, which is part of Anaconda, because it has its benefits. As you see in the article that I sent to you, you can use it. Let me go back to, actually, it's right here. I don't need to switch. Let's see, where am I? Yep, so if we switch back to, let me escape from there. If we go back to here, this is Jupyter Notebooks. On here, I can decide to change this cell from code and make it be markup. And I can type some stuff here. Hello, what's up? that is not going to be executed. I can go ahead and add a new cell at the bottom, and in here I can write more code. 7 plus 11, 711. So in this way, I can have markup. Sorry, this is a markup that's included in my code, and I can use that for a presentation or whatever. If I want to save it, I can decide to save it either as export it as a particular type of content. I can export it as HTML or as a PDF, and so on and so forth. So that's why it's very powerful to use Jupyter Notebooks. And all these things I'm listing out, I encourage you to go out and play with them. Now that you already have this account online, this is something that you can add right away on your resume. You have some exposure to Anaconda, you have exposure to Jupyter. All right, add those things in there. For instance, I know it took us a minute, but here we are done installing that. And let's go. Let me close that. Oops. Yep, move it to trash. And now I should have Jupyter Notebooks available to me. If I click on my applications, come on, you should be able to see where is the Anaconda, right here at the beginning. So the Anaconda Navigator is going to open up, and in Anaconda, like I pointed out, there's a Spyder on there, Spyder IDE, and you can have all of these. So pretty much it's going to give me the same thing we have here on the cloud. I now have it locally on my machine. So if you can have enough space on your computer to install it, good and fine. If not, it's totally fine to use it on the cloud. Mr. Fabian, go ahead with your question.
Does the downloaded version sync with the cloud?
I believe it does sync with the cloud. The other good thing, very good question though, the other good thing with the cloud version is we can collaborate on the cloud. I can decide to be able to share my code with anybody on there. And again, we'll get to that eventually when we start coding, okay? I can share my code and someone else can go in and modify it, which is typically what happens in a team, because one person does not write the code from 1st to 31st. I might write some code, or let's say if our team is deciding that we have to build or make a car, my part in there might be just the color of the car. Somebody's part might be just the tires. Another person might be working on the engine. Another person is working on the seats. Okay. So in there, which we can talk about later on, we know our goal is to make a car, but we're going to branch features off, branch this feature off and give it to this team. When the team is done, they go ahead and commit that change to the branch, and then we go ahead. So at one point in time, again, it has to do with agile development. The tire would be ready. We're waiting on the doors to be ready. We're waiting on the engine to be ready. We're waiting on the seats to be ready. At the end of the day, when the project is done, all those different features are ready. So we don't have to sit and wait for everybody to get ready all at once. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. Glad to hear that answered your question. So let's go back to our presentation again. We've looked at those tools that we're going to need to be able to execute our Python program. So that said, I think there isn't much else that I had to cover today. Let me make sure that I get to the end before I let you guys go. But a few things to summarize that we had to talk about today. We succeeded in defining what code is. Everyone should be familiar and comfortable with that for right now. And we understand what coding means. We described Python. We talked of the benefits of Python. We also talked of the different types of distributions we're able to install for those that did not have, or at least start the process of installing, write a few lines of code, use Python by executing those lines, and then list the different Python tools, okay? All those IDEs and or editors, text editors, and understanding the anatomy, which is the most important part, which will lead us to the next thing that we have to talk about, which is going to take place tomorrow. But that said, before I let you guys go, what other questions do you have to ask? and then I'll do the last demonstration before we're done for the day. I know we still have 7 minutes, so please ask away all your questions. No questions? Is everybody busy playing in Anaconda?
No, it's a comment, not a question.
Go for it.
Thank you, Vitos, for this. It's already seems like you are a godsend. You see those little things that you are breaking down, statements, variables, all of, you know, you go and sit with developers, and sometimes they mention these things. Oh, look at that statement, look at this, look at that function. And just because you don't even know where to look, like, it makes you seem like you are coming from another world. But we don't take those little breakdowns for granted. Where you're telling us this, that is really the foundation, and I just wanted to appreciate you for doing that. So it's worth it, not like skipping into like just coding, but these basic blocks are very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you for that feedback. And I always try to really break it down, because sincerely, there is no way you can build a skyscraper if you don't lay your foundation right, bro. If you do not lay your foundation right, you're going to have some serious problems in future. You know, information is easy to grasp. You can get information from anywhere very easily in this day and age. But that information is not going to mean anything without you having foundational, fundamental, basic knowledge of what it's about. Okay. For instance, if I don't know basic knowledge of what a car is, I don't know that if my car cannot start, somebody will just say, I'll Google online, they say, put water in your tank. I'll take water and put in the gas tank. Next thing you know, car is not moving anymore, because there's information out there very, very much. But without knowing the fundamental knowledge that there's no way that water is going to start my car, what I need is gas. So I have to have that knowledge to know that if car is not starting, maybe it's a starter, maybe I'm out of gas, maybe I have electrical issues, and so on. Being able to take it step by step goes a long way to make your life easier. That's why a mechanic would take 2 minutes to fix your car, but you take 2 months, your car will be sitting there without having any way of fixing it. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Fabian. I think I have another hand up. Might have missed it.
Yeah, no, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah, I just want to contribute to what made Fabian, the first question he asked, whether if you download locally and if you use the cloud, they will be able to communicate, they will sync. I don't think they will sync, because they have two different storage. One is storing in the cloud and the other one is local to you. But it's something that we could try that and see, experiment, since we have the two. I don't think they would sync together.
Very good, very good. That takes me out to share something else which I almost missed. Sorry about that, Aaron. I was going to mention about Visual Studio Code. So let me escape out of this crazy spinning thing here and see if I can open Visual Studio Code. So I should have Visual Studio Code is right there. Okay. So when we use Anaconda on the cloud and we use it locally, you can definitely synchronize it, but it's synchronizing it because you're saving it and you're connecting it to the server. When you download it locally, it's going to ask you to log in if you want to sync to the cloud. Okay. Because at the end of the day, you have that storage in the back end. Now, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Is anybody here familiar with GitHub?
Yes.
Yes. So
Yeah.
GitHub again is a repository. It's a lot of things. It's a repo, it's a version control system, it's all those things. What I encourage you to do is use GitHub, because personally, when I interview developers or anybody, I have to do research on them too. If I go to your GitHub and I see your heat map and I see that you're always contributing stuff, then I know that, okay, it's not about what you tell me, it's about what you can prove, right? When you see that this person actually has stuff that they've been doing all along, then you can go ahead and know that, okay, he has built code concerning this and that, and I can ask them particular questions to that code. So for instance, if you're using Visual Studio Code, one thing you'll notice, let me open Visual Studio Code here for a minute, whenever I decide to open, is that with Visual Studio Code, you can tie it in with GitHub. So when you synchronize it with GitHub, you can push, well, that's another whole topic. You can commit your changes to your local repository, to your folders, and then push it to the cloud, push it to the GitHub repository. When you do that, GitHub is notifying, it's updating your heat map to say that this person was writing code on this day, he was writing code on that day, and so on and so forth. So your heat map shows that you're actively coding. Maybe you're actively coding last month, this month, every month, once in a year or twice in a year, and so on. So again, Visual Studio Code, useful to have that because you might want to integrate it with your GitHub, or in other words, you might want to use Anaconda because you can use it both on the cloud and on your on-premises per se locally. So does that make any sense? Does that help out, Doctor?
Yes.
Awesome.
Mr. Vitus, but
Yes.
you would only be able to see the developer's Git account if it is public, right? Like to see the contributions that he's making. If he has a private account, you wouldn't be able to see that.
Okay, very, very good point again. I know we are definitely outside the scope of the class, but it's good for us to talk about it so that we can have these questions answered. Personally, if I am looking for a job, I will want to make sure that my GitHub account is public so that people can see that every day this guy is coding, right? But if I'm working for an organization, organizations usually have their proprietary version of GitHub, which is Bitbucket, okay? Because that one is, yeah, so with that one, definitely you cannot see what they're doing and so on because of, privacy and security reasons. But when you want to market yourself, for instance, I have my GitHub account that I made a small program there for Buka, those people that play Tia and Buka, right? Just like someone can make their account and make something for, what do you call this popular casino game, Blackjack. Okay, there's another one for Blackjack, maybe rock, paper, scissors, all those stuff. So exactly, by the time we're done with this class, you can write your own fun, program, put it up there. It doesn't have to be perfect because understand that it's always a work in progress. Maybe it's just a hello world application. Write your hello world application and throw it out there. The moment you go to an interview, you don't necessarily have to say, I know Python. Oh yeah, I worked on Python for like a month or two. I did some cool projects. It was so much fun, but I ended up, got busy doing other stuff. So I just need a refresher. I should be good to go. That's it. And then you're not just saying it, you're backing it up and saying, also you can check my GitHub and it's at so and so. I usually add it to my resume. If you add it to your resume, I think it's on my website actually. Let's see if I have that on there. Yeah, so if we go to the website, let's close out of this and scroll all the way to the top. Yep, right here at the top, you have Facebook, you have GitHub, you have YouTube, and you have LinkedIn. So if you click on GitHub, I think this one also opened up right now. If you click on GitHub, you should be able to see my GitHub account. But let's talk about a little bit Visual Studio Code. My GitHub account obviously is not very active, but you can see that icon there is similar to the one here. This is, sorry, I'm showing you guys something different here, but this was my SQL code. Let's go ahead and close that. And I don't need Docker either. So this is what you get when you open Visual Studio Code. If you download Visual Studio Code and you get it. Can everybody see my screen all right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so again, this is Visual Studio Code. This is what you get. It's a whole other tool that we can discuss about. But on here is your Explorer, just like you have Windows Explorer that shows you all your folders. I don't have anything in my space right now. If you want to search for particular stuff, you can search on there. This right here is source control. Source control, again, like I said, you can decide to add GitHub or whichever other source control you're using to be able to write your code and push it. Okay, but right now I don't have anything open. Maybe I should open a folder. I don't know. Maybe I should just open my desktop or not. But yeah, we'll talk about more about this tomorrow when we'll play around with it. But this is just the tool that you use for Visual Studio Code to be able to get that. So we can go on and on and on and on, but I know, we're 3 minutes over the hour and most people might have other things going on. I want to be able to respect your time and not steal time away from you so that we can start on time and end on time every day. So very good question so far. Do I have any other questions? Anybody else wants to chime in before I let you guys go?
So where can we find the PowerPoint slides that you used
Awesome.
today?
So again, very good question. If you saw the link that I posted in the chat, you should be able to join the classroom. I'm going to share that with you again. If you join the classroom, you should be able to see, I will post it once this the video recording actually completes. I'm going to post both the PowerPoint, a PDF of the PowerPoint, as well as the video recording for you to be able to keep track. So as you can see on here, this is your classroom. Tomorrow again, I'm going to catch on with you. But very good question. I'll take that as a takeaway.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Sorry, maybe I'm asking a question that was already answered since
That's
I came late.
fine.
Since I came late, I just want to make sure that I'm catching up at the very dying minute. This course, what is? I want to know more information about the course. Is it a paid course or how? And I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I just
it's a very expensive course. Yes, it is a paid course. Usually I have free courses running, but again, for me, it's not a matter of the money. It's about the time. Okay, the time is the most important thing. Anyone that's going to attend the class is very, very encouraged. You should not be attending a class if it's for financial reasons. So I usually charge $1,000 for this course, which is going to take 5 weeks, 10 classes. But I am willing to work with anyone on a payment plan, payment schedule, and so on. Like I said, the main thing here is making the time to do it. I don't mind teaching it for free, but I'll definitely not teach it for free because it will make people lazy. If you know that you're spending money for something, it's going to push you to go ahead and attend it. If you know that you've spent $100, you're not going to be staying asleep or not sacrificing for it. Okay, but this is something that you can learn by yourself. You can go to YouTube. There are millions and millions of videos on there. You can pick up free classes here and there, but it is a matter of dedication, a matter of commitment, and very, very importantly, practice. If you don't practice, I guarantee you forget. I can guarantee you 100%. If you don't practice your dialect, you will not know how to speak it. If you don't practice me, if you ask me French now, I'll butcher it because I don't know Je ne connais pas, because I don't practice it. It's the same with Python, it's the same with SQL, it's the same with HTML. Anything you don't practice, you're going to lose. Even Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, those guys know wonderful football, but they are still there every day practicing to get better. If we don't practice, you're going to lose it. So we are here to be a resource for each other. Ask those questions. And every day you leave class, you should have a notepad that you have written at least one thing you learned. Whether it's a tool or a skill, don't just write it. Incorporate it immediately in your resume, because you have to be able to sell yourself. Those are the things that are going to make you change from being wonderful to being great. You're going to stand out from your competition, because when you go to an interview, whether you are at work and requesting for a pay raise, or you're requesting for, getting to a higher position, you have competitors. You have to have competitive edge. You have to have competitive advantage. If I'm looking at A and B, and I see that A knows Python, B does not know Python, A knows Python and PowerShell, Python and Word, and so on and so forth, then it's easy for you to differentiate yourself from the crowd, rather than just being comfortable with where you are. Push yourself. It's not going to be easy. If you're going to be running late, make an extra effort and communicate whatever it takes. So like I said, I'm available to anyone, even after class or before class. Obviously, I have multiple classes that I teach. I also teach full-time at the UWM, which is United Wholesale Mortgage. That's my primary job. I enjoy teaching. A couple days ago, we just graduated, I don't know, about 60 students. Those students have been working really hard, and I'm really proud of them. They started in November. They had no knowledge. When I say no knowledge, absolutely no knowledge. There's one guy there that was older than me. He came in, he was a constructor. Came in November. We worked in November, December, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year. We are still there. The day after Christmas, we are there. The day after New Year, the day after Thanksgiving, we are there working. Yesterday, he came to me. He's like, man, I can't believe I did this. I'm like, now I can come up to you to ask you questions. Because of the dedication, the hard work, he did not know how to type any single command on the keyboard. But now he's an associate developer who knows how to write all types of code, because he put in the time and the dedication. It's not impossible. If you can speak English, French, any language, you can write programming. People just make it look mystical. It's not. It's not. It's actually the easiest thing. The only thing is that you end up being bored, because the things that people think is so difficult to do, you take 1 minute and do it, and then you sit around doing nothing. So I encourage you, reach out if you have any questions in the middle of the night, in the afternoon. If I'm not available, I might be in class, but as soon as I see that text message or that call, I'll reach out to you and try to answer your question. But all in all, you need to have fun. So we're going to be writing programs. Be creative. Have the most fun ever. There's no way you can break everything or anything. Play with it and have fun. Enjoy it. Does that help?
Very much.
Is there a WhatsApp group for this course?
Okay, very good. The reason that there's no WhatsApp group for it is because I want to encourage us to use this Google Classroom, okay? Everybody probably uses Google for one reason or another. As you can see on my screen, if I click on this waffle icon, you see Google Apps. There's Search, YouTube, Meet, which we use, Calendar, which I also use, and you see here there is Classroom. I'm using Classroom because we can come in here in the stream and communicate. If I have an announcement, I can make an announcement here. Everybody in the class will have it. So if I have a question, I can come in and post the question as well for everybody. I can attach YouTube videos, I can attach files, I can pull it directly from my Google Drive and links and share it with everybody. And from there, I can also set it up to schedule it and so on and so forth. That's where we're going to have the stream, just like your Facebook wall. This is easier for you to navigate. Whether it's later on, 10 years from now, you come here, you still have it just like your emails. But with the WhatsApp group, you're going to have to be doing a lot of scrolling and moving around. It's taking up your space and so on and so forth. This is in the cloud, just like all the other services. WhatsApp, managing it and managing this will be problematic. So all you need to do is the link I shared with you, as you see here. Oops, let me discard it. Once you come in, once you click on that link, it's going to add you in here under the students. And I have all my classes also that you can see. You can connect to multiple classes, whichever class that you like to take. And in one place, you can have access to that. There's also an app that you can use. The app is on your phone. You can easily get all of that information just like your WhatsApp as well. Okay. So I encourage you to click on that link. Yeah, I don't want to send anything now. Let me go ahead and send the link again for those that came in late. And join the class. That's where you're going to have your PowerPoints, your videos from the class. Everything is going to be added on there. And you should be able to easily, track your changes. I'll also have quizzes and so on will also be in there for you. Okay, does that sound good? Did I send it twice? Yes, I just sent the link twice. So go click on the link, join Google Classroom. I can see a few people just did. That's excellent. And I'll go ahead and upload all those notes. All I have to do is just attach it. And once Google comes back to me and tells me that it's done processing this video that is being recorded, it's also going to be attached there very easily. And you can always have it whenever. So here, for instance, is the breakdown of what we did today. Again, I can go ahead and post it. Let me make sure it goes into the right folder. Let it go into week 1. Once I post it, you should also get notifications. Sometimes I might do it at 6 a.m. Maybe I have an article that I want to share with you. I can go ahead and copy that article and share it in here. So now you should be able to see that in week 1, something has been posted. If you go to our stream, it's going to tell you, let me discard this.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
So we can equally access all these recordings and the PowerPoint and everything, the presentation through the dkv2s.org, right? Everything is there as well, right?
On the dkv2s.org, what you will have, let me switch back to it. What you have in there is just the PowerPoint, and I might not be updating it all the time. For instance, today's PowerPoint is showing up in there, which is public. This is public. Anyone can have access to this information. Again, information is information, but they did not get all the explanations that we went through in class, right? So if you come in here, you just get all the PowerPoints, but this doesn't really tell you what's going on. You just know that this is what we looked at in class. This really doesn't tell you everything in here. You have to decipher the rest for yourself. But if you want the one with the audio and everything, then good. It's the same for all the other classes that you see on here. All these other programs, all their PowerPoints are in there. I try to incorporate all of them all the time. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I'm really have to apologize. We are 60 minutes over time. I hope I'm not keeping anyone behind. But any last notes, any questions? All right. So since I want to let you guys go, everybody that was successful in getting to Anaconda, or even if you're using your personal, your local Python, I'd like you to end the day by using import this and run that. Oh, sorry about that, guys. My phone is going crazy. All right. So as you can see, import this gives you I love this. This is one of my favorite things in Python. It gives you what is known as the Zen of Python. So this tells you why a few rules per se that you should have when going through Python. And it also works in real life, okay? So in Python, when you write your code, remember that beautiful is always better than ugly. Explicit is better than explicit. Don't imply anything, explain it. Simple is better than complex, and complex is better than complicated. Flat is better than nested. When we write code, you want your code to be flat. You don't want to nest code inside another. Parse is better than dense. Write stuff that is light to see. Don't choke things up together, right? You also want to have that readability and so on and so forth. So we'll talk about all of this tomorrow. I'd like to leave you with that. Go ahead and type import this. That is an Easter egg for Python, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Sounds good?
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you too. Enjoy the rest of your day. Let's see if I can end with some music while everyone is set.